Good evening. My name's Sean O'Rourke. I'd like to call the Milton School Building Committee meeting to order. It's now 7:03. We'll start with a roll call vote of those members that are attending. So I'll just call you off as I see in the checkerboard. Glenn Hoffman.
Here.
Scott Tereshek.
Present.
Selena Miranda.
Here.
And myself, Sean O'Rourke, and Tim Lombard.
Present.
Perfect. All right. So we've got our quorum. I know Aqua's going to be here in a little bit. Betty's typically running late when she comes back from school. Similar from Mike, he was on some parent duty, but he's going to be signing in about 10 or 15 minutes. I think Carrie was the only one that confirmed she wasn't available tonight. But we'll just get started with it. So the first thing on our agenda is citizen speak. To reserve 15 minutes of time, 3 minutes per speaker, for those that wish to discuss or speak. So by using the raise hand icon at the bottom, if anybody's wishing to speak, please raise your hand and we'll pull you up. And seeing none. All right, so we'll move on. Second thing on the agenda is review and approval of minutes. So I know we were behind a couple meetings, but I got out the minutes for August 29th and September 2nd. Glenn, I got the ones that you sent for October, but I didn't get a chance to distribute to everybody, so we'll pick those up at our next meeting.
No problem.
So just based on those two, which were August 29th and September 2nd, I don't know if anybody had any comments, edits, or anything like that. And if none, entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
All right, do I hear a second?
Second.
Second.
All right, Scott. All right, we'll do a roll call vote for that. Glenn?
Yes.
All right, Scott?
Yes.
Selena?
Yes.
And Tim?
I vote to approve.
And Sean, yes. Perfect. All right. All right. Next on the agenda, moving quickly. Old business. So first thing on old business is the BSC survey work. So with us tonight from BSC is Dominic Rinaldi. So Dominic was in charge of the design of realigning Gow Road. So he had sent over the sketches today that I forward, not sketches, but actually design drawings for the realignment of that road. The remaining work for BSC to kind of go over the parcels so we can kind of know how much land in total of those options we're going to have. We're going to probably get those drawings early next week, and then once I get those, I'll distribute to everybody. But for now, Dominic, do you mind if I bring up the drawings and just kind of walk us through the two things that were there?
No, perfect. Sounds great.
Yeah, or if you want to present too, if it's easier for you to drive, let me know.
I mean, it might be just because
Sure.
then I have the mouse, and if that's all right.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Share screen.
Yeah, let me just see how I make you a presenter.
It seems to be just giving me the ability to do it. So
it's perfect. Our friends at Milton Access TV taking care of us. I appreciate that.
So first of all, good evening, Dominic Rinaldi, senior civil engineer with BSC Group. So the two sketches are pretty similar, and you may have to actually look somewhat closely to see the difference. The biggest difference is what we use for a buffer from the adjacent wetland areas. So this first one I have up here is based on the town's standard 25-foot no disturb wetland buffer. Basically just realigning the roadway to come further north, as close to the wetlands as we really can, or the 25-foot no disturb, with the biggest pinch point, if you could see my cursor being up here in the very top of the page, and then reconnecting back right around the curve of the road as it goes around the track. From a grading standpoint, it works out pretty well. We're matching just to reference, we're matching the cross section of the existing road. It's a 24-foot curb to curb with 5-foot sidewalk on the north side of it. So that you're basically maintaining that aspect of it. One sort of interesting, or at least to me, point of this is you're actually right now your existing road, while it conforms to AAB, Architectural Access Board standards. From the standpoint it's an existing road, it is steeper than 5%, which is the steepest that AAB is looking for sidewalks. And the nice part about this alignment, or one of the nice parts about this alignment, and frankly, the other alignment we did, is we actually managed to keep all of your slopes below 5%. So that at least this portion of the sidewalk is AAB compliant. So you can see we have on the profiles, just because of the way the grading is, the existing grades are, as you sort of come along this section, it's pretty flat. There's a couple of low spots, and then we get up as we come through here to about 4.75%. As I said, a couple existing little spots. We didn't really mark them out on this yet, but conceptually from stormwater management, what we're thinking is just catch basins in the low spots and maybe a nice little bioretention area in this sort of notch where the wetlands pull back to treat and infiltrate the stormwater runoff that would come from this. The second version we sent, as I said, if you look quickly, it looks very, very, very similar. This one is, as per the request, actually pushes that wetland buffer out to 50 feet. So that we're not disturbing anything closer than 50 feet to the wetlands. Very similar roadway, very similar profile based on the grades. It's just pulling it out, not always 25 feet, but about that. The biggest difference between these two is really the space that you're getting in here. If you measure up the space between the existing road and the proposed road, this version with the 25-foot buffer gets you about 15,000 square feet more land in that gap. But other than that, functionally, they're the same. Safety-wise, they're about the same. We kept the alignment very simple. You could do a crazy alignment that really chases this wetland back and comes around, but you're going to be spending a lot of money for very little return in that case, and really, frankly, creating a terrible alignment for driving. So this is kind of the approach we took. I don't know if anybody has any questions or wants to talk about this.
Yeah, I'll open up to anybody, on the committee or any other guests that we've invited that have any questions. If so, you just use the raise hand feature, and then I can call on you. Yep, Scott.
Thanks, Sean. I guess more comments than questions. Just looking at it, I think that from more of an engineering perspective, the 50-foot buffer just lays out a little bit better to me. The slopes leading into our site are a little bit flatter. Like you look at the 25 here, right around where the cursor is, it gets pretty steep. But with the 50-foot buffer, it's pretty flat through there. Plus, we get the added square footage in that area, and the 25-foot buffer option is slightly less of a slope too. So, just a couple of slight things that I think make that a much better option.
In that option you're talking about, Scott's the 50-foot one, the further one out, right?
Right. Not the one that's on the screen right now, but the other one.
This is the 50-foot.
That's the 50
on the screen.
I
said they look really similar. It's hard to tell. This is the 25,
foot.
so the 25 pulls out a
See
little
on
bit.
The inside of the turn, the slopes, tying into the grades are a lot flatter. There's not really a ramp down from the road to the site, and it just opens it up a little bit better.
Yeah, you do, because it's a little bit longer alignment. You have the ability to pull that grade just a little bit flatter. As I said, they both do at least nicely get below 5% on this steepest part, which does at least keep this portion of your sidewalk AAB compliant, as opposed to now as you come through really here and honestly up here, you're not. But like you said, it is a little, the 25-foot version gets it just a little bit flatter, and like as you mentioned, gets you. I'm honestly what mostly because I had looked at them from 10,000 feet. I was kind of surprised by how much more area you get with this one. So
Yeah. Ada?
I have a question about the retention area that you're talking about. What would that be like from the ground? Is that an underground structure or a low area where water would gather, or what do you have in mind?
yeah, I mean, what I have in mind is the second. It's a, we call it bioretention area or rain garden. Generally we try to keep them maybe a foot of total depth, and you'd have an outlet with an overflow. We try to keep the ponding to about 8 inches. Really because you put, whether you put in grasses or actually put in more ornamental vegetation too, and these, you're putting things that are tolerant to periodic inundation of water, but you don't want stuff. You don't want 2 feet of water in there, 3 feet of water. It's a relatively shallow basin that would, like I said, basically be in this nook. That's my personal option. They are really, basically it's just a grading exercise to construct. They're easy to maintain. You periodically, scoop some sediment out, replace any, older or dead vegetation, and just sort of let it do its thing. There are underground options if you all prefer that. They work just as well. They're proven, they're great products. We use them all the time, but on a personal basis, professional basis, I guess when we have some space like we would in here, I do find that the sort of surface features, particularly something like a bioretention area that's shallow, and for this application, it's not going to be that big. It's it's going to be maybe a couple 100 square feet in footprint. It's not going to be huge.
Okay, thank you.
So on that same note, I had a couple of questions too, Dom. So for the 25-foot option, as you noted for that bioretention well, if we went to the 50-foot option, does that create a larger area that we could utilize for that?
Yeah, I mean, you're just further away, and so it's you can sort of see if I could.
Yeah. Yep.
So you can sort of see that the 25 mostly actually sort of jumps off the page up north there. You'd be talking about this area here, and frankly, really more this area, because you want to keep it. Any maintenance you do is going to be done right from the edge of the road. We're not building something down way off the road. You want it right up against the road. So you do end up with, just because you physically have more space here. But functionally, they'll both work fine.
So one of the other things that might not be evident, when you were looking at this too, is the wetlands to the left of your cursor, the vegetation that's down there. A gentleman on our conservation commission actually found a very rare endangered plant species that I think exists down there. So would any of that runoff cause any problems?
Well,
question, I know.
It is a tough question, especially because I don't know what it is, and I would have to, even if I did, I probably wouldn't know what it was. To tell the truth, right? I like to joke about plants. I know the white one is a birch tree. But
It's all good.
We certainly, if that's information you have about what it is, it'd be good to know. And I could talk to our wetlands and plants folks in house, and we can figure out. But even as part of that, if that really is over here, another part of what you can do with, I mean, that is part of the point of the bioretention area, is to get that treatment before right, to promote infiltration and get the treatment before you discharge anything. And you can design it if that very rare plant species is sort of confined to this area, you can design that overflow so it really goes more to the northeast, say. Just as almost, even if it wouldn't be something that would necessarily harm that plant, you can go a little belt and suspenders and just sort of protect it that much more.
Okay.
So there's definitely options on either front, depending upon what exactly that is and what it needs, I guess.
All right. Bill, you're up.
Yeah, hi, Sean. So, one question I would have, though, as far as snow removal with sand and rock salt, are we going to have any different restriction from the 25 to the 50? Because we're getting so close to the wetlands there, when we have to move snow into that, one thing you don't want to do is throw snow into the street, because that makes it real difficult. So now you're throwing it into the wetlands. Is that going to be any bigger restriction versus the 25 versus the 50 for us?
You definitely, I mean, a lot of that will definitely have to be discussed with your conservation commission, but you would certainly have more, like you say, you certainly have more space. That's the 25, sorry. I went back to this, I'm confused on it. You certainly have more space, particularly, as I said, really this sort of northern point of the curve is the pinch point on both of them. It's the closest we come in either option. And you certainly get more space to push snow off the edge of this road, there. I mean, they may be amenable to some options with, are you allowed to, does anybody know, do you salt this now? I don't know if anybody happens to know.
Yeah, obviously you hate to say, I tell you what, we're very, conscious about how we treat snow and ice.
Yeah.
Obviously we like to use a lot of sand, but sometimes, if it becomes icy conditions are really tough, and kids do walk that, people do drive that, so, that's always a challenge, any type of maintenance.
Yeah, and I mean the site. Well, I don't have the section on here. It is, it's this pretty much the same section. It's Crown Road, and the sidewalk is sloped back into the road at least. So the runoff from the sidewalk is going to go into the road, get captured, and get whatever level of treatment we're providing through the catch basins, bioretention area, whatever we end up doing. But yeah, you would have. In this 50-foot option, you would have a little more space there if that's going to become sort of if that's going to become the issue, the biggest issue with the Concom. They may push for this and some other options though with this. And it's tough. I mean, and I'm sure if any of you have dealt with managing plowing, it's tough, but you could restrict plowing to not push off the edge in this area and just push it, whether, I guess, depending on which direction they're coming from, push it past there and then push it off the edge when you're further away.
Yeah, it's just one of those questions that, obviously I'm in the maintenance world, so I have to deal with these things afterwards.
Yeah, it's a good question. And that is definitely going to come up in your discussions with the Conservation Commission.
Okay.
Yep. And taking notes on that, all this stuff too, Bill, because, these are things we'll want their input on, as part of these options. One of the other ones, Dom, in the parcel that we're creating, between the new alignment and the existing alignment, is most likely where we're going to end up, locating the school. So kind of along that path, are there any prohibitive, portions of it to cut in driveways and stuff like that? as you're looking at it, and it's more off the top of your head, you know.
I mean, it's certainly easier, you know, as you come through here, you know, driveways sort of through this stretch where not only is the and both versions where not only is the alignment straight, but it's flat.
Yep.
It's a very shallow slope, so you know, anyone pulling out can look and see both directions for a good distance. I mean, I wouldn't. It's not unheard of, and it's not like it doesn't happen all the time, but I would attempt to avoid putting driveways up on this portion just for that reason, as you're coming through the turn and you're coming through a curve.
Yeah, down a slope to a curve.
Yeah, that's not that it isn't done or can't be done, but your preference would be to have, you know, your at least your main access points. You could certainly, if you did if the fire department wanted some like emergency circulation or something, you could certainly have secondary driveways or something like that over on this side, but I'd push for this edge.
Gotcha. All right. Any other questions from anybody on the committee? All right. Seeing none, you know, Dawn, I appreciate it, and you know, I mean, we'll look forward for those boundary plans, you know, next week, and we'll get into those on our next meeting.
Yeah, so, and I'll stop share, and certainly if anybody thinks of anything, you know, post meeting, you know, Sean has my email, and whether you do it through him or directly to me, I'm happy to answer anything. So.
Yeah, if you know, on that note, if people do have questions, just forward them to me, and then I'll try to just gather them all, you know, Dom, so we're not bombarding you with multiple emails back and forth. I can just put a list together and send it to you if anything came up.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. All right, well, I'll let you go, sir. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. All right, no problem. Take care, everybody, and hope everyone has a happy Thanksgiving.
Yep. All right. Perfect. So on to next topic, which is essentially the Guile Road update for the land swap and stuff like that. And just a commenting note too. So for Secretary tonight, Aqua, I took the notes up till, you know, you jumped on, but it's for you tonight. It was your turn to be secretary. So if you just kind of capture it from here going forward, I'll email you my minutes. Does that work?
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So in regards to Guile Road, I did a presentation, and Ada joined me this past week with the select board for a request for a special town meeting in February, and you know, essentially to address the options, you know, that we've been discussing and stuff like that. So as of right now, the select board has approved that special town meeting in February, and essentially it has a specific timeline associated with it, whereas we'll be getting our articles ready essentially for January 3rd, and then essentially those articles would get approved by the select board, and Mike, jump in if I go wrong on any of this stuff, in January, and then it would be presented to the warrant committee. The warrant committee would go through their exercises of reviewing it and approving it. And then essentially as the warrant gets approved, it will get sent out to the printer. I can pull up the exact dates, but to bring everything up, Mike?
Sean, thanks. The only add is what the select board may choose to do on January 3rd is to approve including the article in the warrant without necessarily taking a position on it. So if all the information isn't there by January 3rd, but the draft of the article is in place so that it can be submitted to the warrant committee, that should be enough. You know, always better to have it fully baked, but if there are some things that need to be tied up over the succeeding week after that, or maybe week or possibly 2 weeks after that, then it seems to me we can probably do that.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm just pulling up I thought I had the exact dates. Yeah, so just for everyone's notice, what the specific dates were December 8th and December 15th. It would be advertised in the Milton Times. January 3rd, the select board closes the warrant. On the 4th, they email those articles that Mike just talked about to the warrant committee. On January 17th, the select board approves the index page. On January 30th, the warrant goes to the printer. On February 6th, the printer gets delivered to the post office, delivers the warrants to the post office. February 10th, warrants get posted into the homes and delivered. And then February 27th is the special town meeting. So just for everyone, I'll email that out to everybody too, so they have it. So essentially, it's a decent amount of work that we'll need to work together as a committee, kind of going backwards to hit some specific marks. Meetings with the Conservation Commission, School Committee, Parks Department, and then the Warrant Committee going forward after that to kind of go through a lot of that stuff. My goal right now is hoping tonight BSC would have our overall plans done so we know the boundary surveys, but they promised them to me early next week. So essentially by our next meeting, we should have enough on there to kind of digest and walk through them. One of the things I got to think about too, I was hoping to have the kind of a deep dive discussion tonight to go into the 8 parcel options that we're looking at for them, just to kind of walk through them and look at them. From the 2 options that were shown tonight for Gow Road, the realignment of that, we'd be utilizing a little over 3 acres in that parks parcel, which is good news because originally when we went after this, or came up with this idea, we weren't sure how much we were going to get. 3 acres is fairly significant. And knowing we had 6.8 acres before, my guess is we're going to end up somewhere around that same number. So if we've got 3 to 3.5 acres on the parks land, we're probably going to have 3 to 3.5 on the conservation land, down from 6.8 acres. So that's good news. As far as tonight, the true hard numbers on that stuff we'll get next week. But I just want to kind of open it up to folks to hear any comments or anything like that right now. No hands, surprisingly. All right. So yeah, I mean, once those documents are prepped and sent out, I'll forward those on for next week. All right. Nothing else on that. All right. So next item on the agenda is an update on Fompon, the convent that we looked at there. So essentially with the convent, I know Glenn and myself have been looking at it and stuff like that. So if you don't mind, Glenn, I'll let you just kind of take the floor for a minute, give your update of kind of what you found.
Hi guys. Yeah, I'll just give you quite kind of an overhaul of what would happen if you did renovate this building. It's definitely missing a few things that are required by code. The way they do, even if we didn't expand the building at all and we just did a straight renovation of the building, I think it would still be a level 3 alteration, which means the whole building would be able to be brought up to code. As far as meeting our needs, Sean's done some studies that I'll let him get a little bit more into that. The building itself would not fill our needs unless we did say just an isolated, early childhood type center. And even then you might need some expansion. But just some other observations after walking through the building. I already mentioned, I think it would it's definitely going to trigger full code compliance. And what that means is it's going to need a full sprinkler system. It's going to need an updated fire alarm system. Massachusetts building code actually has seismic requirements for existing buildings. So that would be kicked in as well, where seismic things would have to be updated within the building to make it structurally sound in case there was ever an earthquake. As far as making the building functional with the structural things, me and Sean spoke extensively about that. I believe the floors of the building are one or a two-way slab, meaning the exterior walls are actually bearing walls. Either one or two of the corridor walls between the existing dormitory rooms is also structural. To make this building functional, you would have to remove those walls, which would mean adding structure, probably steel, to hold up that existing slab. Accessibility wise, entrances are one of the entrances already accessible. The driveway entrance is not accessible, but could be made accessible pretty easily just by adding a ramp. All the bathrooms, none of the bathrooms are accessible and would need to be updated completely, which is another expense. The interior, basically block walls throughout the interior of the building. The first floor is very high. I believe 11'3" floor to the underside of the structure, which is pretty high for a building that was built at this time. So it's very adaptable, that first floor area. The second and third floors are 8'7" floor to structure, which is still workable, but a little less room for ductwork and whatnot if we were to put in a drop ceiling in there. And the second and third floor, all the functional uses are on the first floor. I think Sean's going over most of this stuff. The second and third floor is all dormitory use. It's all rooms, so it all have to be removed. Another thing that would kick in code requirements for this building is we would be changing use. Right now, it's a dormitory use with other types of uses mixed in with it. So that would kick in code requirements as well. I'm trying to think. There's some other stuff, Sean, but it's not stuff we need to get into now. I mean, there's a lot of stained glass. Typically, when you do work on an archdiocese property, they want you to salvage certain things. And one of the things they usually want you to salvage is stained glass, either by leaving it in place or, which probably wouldn't work for a public school, or by, taking it out and relocating it somewhere else. The other big thing, Sean, I came across that we didn't talk about earlier is the stairways. They're not code compliant as currently built. They could be made to be code compliant, but right now the door clearances aren't enough. I think on the push side or pull side of the door, there was like 6 inches. You need 18 inches on the pull side, 6 inches on the push side, and we don't have that right now. Sorry, 12 inches on the push side, and the handrails aren't compliant. So that's what I have. I don't know if anyone has any questions, or if you want to add to that at all, Sean.
Yeah, I'll touch on it a little bit. So the program, when we looked at the Early Childhood Education Center, programmatically it was 26 classrooms that we were looking for, and essentially that was derived from the DRA study that was done in 2019. And then similarly, with the number of classrooms that we're running right now, from talking to Dr. Redden, some of the other folks who were, dealing with this daily. I think the mix was 17 kindergartens and nine pre-kindergarten classrooms. I know Dr. Redden's on tonight too, so you're welcome to chime in on this too. But to fit that many classrooms in the 45,000 square foot space that we have wouldn't work. So working with Glenn, I've came up with options from, looking at this through a couple different iterations on our end to see what it would take to expand Fontbonne to accommodate that many classrooms. And essentially the expansion was over 20,000 square feet. And when we looked at that, it's in line. When we looked at that DRA study previously, there were two options for an early childhood education center. The first was an addition onto the high school, which was 55,000 square feet. I believe that's the one I quoted last time. And then when I went back and looked at it, Nada made me aware of it too. There was a second option for a freestanding early childhood education center that added up to about 59,000 square feet. So there's a delta there of about 5,000. With the roughly 20,000 square foot addition we would need, it brings us up to 65,000 square feet. And some of the space in this existing at Fontbonne, the chapel area, for example, where the stained glass is kind of space that we could convert to classrooms. It would be very costly to do that. So when I looked at it, I figured that'd be better used as like an auditorium or something like that, kind of left as it is. In regards to the the educational components of those things, I'll open it up for Ada or Dr. Redden to chime in, for that, because Glenn and I look at it from space and construction and cost standards that are there, along with Scott and Tim when we did our site walk. So Scott, you were right about the stairs and stuff like that. That's one of the first things you brought up when you were there. So we can tackle those type of things, but for us as a committee, Ada, Dr. Redden, Selena, Betty, the school committee members, we look for you to let us know, does what we're building, will that fit educationally, what your needs are too. So Dr. Redden, I'll turn it over to you first.
Hi, thank you. So I think that there's two questions. So putting the preschools together does pull resources. So when you're talking about a special ed program, because remember, we're not offering universal preschool. So that's important. So when you are supporting preschool and having all the resources, staffing in one facility, I think there's a lot of benefits to that. I do think it opens up space at the Carnegie College in particular, but I think that's almost secondary because of what you can do and what you can leverage by providing so much support for our neediest population here in Milton. That being said, if you build it, they will come. I definitely think we have to be careful. Like that takes care of what we have now, and I'm opening up potentially a new classroom next month. I've opened up the classroom last year, and that's just the regulations are very strict in the preschool. No matter, I could put a preschool class in the gym, for example, and 15 is the cap. Doesn't matter how big that gym is, that's the cap. The regulations are very strict and clear. So having a preschool center for what we have now sounds like what Fontbonne would be, but I would hate to sort of pretend that wouldn't encourage more people to sort of move to Milton, come to Milton, or move out of a private program somewhere and decide to come attend Milton schools, and then we wouldn't have the space, or we'd be in a very similar situation. So I do think the idea of having everyone at Fontbonne sounds great and would definitely help out the both complexes, Carnegie College and the Tucker. But I just want to I just see that enrollment growing so rapidly, and then having a whole nother facility and how that could potentially make it grow even faster.
Okay, thank you. Ada?
Yeah, I think Dr. Redden's right that we do have to think about, if we build it, they will come. We saw that the last school building project, and that's how we got to where we are. What we're talking about in terms of the number of classrooms for kindergarten in this new building is exactly the number of classrooms we have right now. So it doesn't have any room for expansion in numbers of classes. And if we were to have more students attend and we needed to open another class, whether there would be room in this new building or whether they would need to go back into the elementary school buildings, I mean, that would be a decision that we'd have to make. Educationally, I think there are, as Dr. Redden said, some great advantages of bringing our early childhood programs together in one place, just in terms of the staff being able to work together, sharing resources and collaborating, and I think it would strengthen our programs. But it's it's a challenge, you know, would we be building enough? And the other thing that I've also wondered about is whether we shouldn't be planning for full day preschool as well. And we have a number of I don't have the numbers in front of me, but we discussed this last week. Number of half day preschool programs, and I'm not sure. Did we just decide that 9 classrooms would be able to meet that need, Dr. Redden? Do you remember?
Yes, between the Cunningham and the Tucker
Incoming.
basically we have now. Yes.
Great. So that would be a great thing, and would certainly address the need that we heard loud and clear from parents this past spring when we conducted a needs assessment of preschool programs. It was very clear to families, from families, that these half-day programs are very difficult for working families to manage. So I think that's all I have for now.
Okay. Betty?
So my question is not so much educational as more as about construction costs, because I'm thinking about how, you know, many years ago when we built the first project, there was a push to do a lot of renovation. And it turned out that some of the renovation costs were actually more expensive than new construction. And I remember a story, and I think Glenn Pavlicek, you told me the story, that when you were renovating Tucker, and they were trying to put in new windows into the Tucker, the wall that would be supporting the windows was crumbling and had to be all of them had to be repaired significantly to even hold up the windows in place. And I'm just wondering, as you think about the other Glenn Hoffman, when you were talking about the renovations that would be needed at the Fontbonne site to bring everything up to code and then to make it work for a school, whether or not you had any idea about what the renovation costs are these days compared to new construction, because I certainly know that construction costs have changed dramatically, you know, since the last school building project. But I wondered if anyone with a building background could comment on that.
Hey, Betty, it's Glenn. Me and Sean actually talked about this, and I will tell you the hardest job in the field right now is cost estimating, because the past 2 years costs have just been all over the place. It's very hard to determine what it is off the cuff. I will say this, that there are certain costs associated with renovation that you don't get with new construction. One of them, a couple of them I talked about, you know, bringing the building up to structural code. But some of the stuff we'd have to do with a new building anyway, like the sprinkler system and the fire alarm system, where you really save a lot of money with renovating an existing building rather than a brand new building, is on the site costs and bringing in utilities and all those kind of, I don't know that they're soft costs, but they're not costs directly associated with the building itself. So I think Sean has the right idea, where at some point we really want to have a good cost breakdown of both of these options so we can really know what we're paying for and if we're actually going to pay a whole lot more for one over the other. I hope that helps. But yeah, right now, like square footage cost for construction now that it's so all over the place, I wouldn't even want to throw a number out there.
Okay.
I think.
All right, that helped. Thank you.
Yeah, one of the other things I'll just chime into, Betty, is, you know, I'm reaching out to different contacts that I have that do school building projects, whether they're renovation or brand new construction, to get those numbers. MSBA also publishes all their construction cost data on their website. So we're jumping on their website and the graphs. I'll email that out to everybody so they can take a look at it themselves. And what it does is it gives a history of their bid costs that they've got on different projects in there. They actually publish a very large spreadsheet that shows, you know, breakdown of all the costs, MEP, architectural, site costs, stuff like that. So if people really want to dive into it, my hope is leverage the people that do this type of stuff present, the options that we're looking at to them to get those numbers. So the person I'm dealing with too is, I'm hoping we can get it done for very, very inexpensive price. They'll be within our kind of remaining budget that's left for school building committee. So I'm working on that now. So a couple hands up, Dr. Redden, you're first.
Let's be real quick. I should have started with it would or emphasize that this would solve a lot. Like our preschools currently are not in ideal spaces either. They don't have access to bathrooms. And again, our most severe students at Cunningham don't have access to bathrooms directly in their classrooms. They're on the second floor right by the main office. So they're going up steps. Like there's definitely a huge benefits to providing sort of early childhood center, and not to mention sort of what Ada ended with just thinking of full day and the implications that would have on just early learning in general and all of the schools if students had access to a full day preschool program in general. So definitely, I'm just starting with some of the things we talked about from our last conversation, but there's definitely a lot of good things that would come if students had an early childhood center. For sure.
Okay. And just one follow-up on that too for you and Ada, just while you're commenting on it, the 9 preschool classrooms that you talked about, that's 9 preschool full day classrooms.
We don't have it now. That would what they would turn into if, again, we planned for now and made the half day full day. Yes.
Yeah. So the 9 that are there would represent a full day preschool program, not half day programs. I'm just point of clarification so everybody's on the same page. Sorry.
Full day preschool we have now is completely substantially separate. So that capacity there is 9. Again, no matter how big the room is, 9 is the cap of those rooms, and we have 3 of those classrooms currently. Every other class is a half day program, and so that cap is 15. So we had a quick conversation about what that would mean if we tried to go full day, what that would look like. There is the full day program at Tucker. Glenn can speak more to that. It's not a special ed program, but it is a preschool program that has a different structure than the 2 I just mentioned.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Dr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you. So one point of clarification. So in order to be able to, I guess, have the ideal, so we have enough space for all the pre-K and kindergarten classrooms that we would want to renovate what's currently there and also make the addition of 20,000 square feet. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So we're looking at a project that's both sort of new construction and also the renovation, which I can tell you, in my day job, I'm in the process of renovating a church. And gosh, the price just keeps going up, I think, every day. So it is very hard to pin down a cost at this particular point. And just bringing everything up to code is a lot. But I guess another piece is that, I guess for us to continue to consider, and I think it's the point that Dr. Redden already made, which is that by doing both the renovation and then adding the 20,000 square feet, it's more about meeting the current demand. But definitely, I think if we increase the number of full day, that just increases demand as well. So it's something to consider that it will take care of the problem right now, but it's certainly not into the future. And so we will find ourselves in a predicament. Just something to continue to consider. I hate to be sort of the Debbie Downer here, but it does feel like it's something to consider as we go forward. But thanks for clarifying that. I just was trying to understand sort of the magnitude of the project.
Yeah, the one, if I can clarify on that one too, as a point of clarification. So Ada, the preschool is currently capped, right? Kindergarten's fully, the enrollment there is not capped, but you do cap preschool enrollment. So
That's right.
So the 7 classroom or the 9 classrooms that would be planned for an all-day preschool would need to keep capped at some point. It wouldn't be open enrollment, for similar to what you're experiencing in kindergarten. So, yeah. Mike.
Thank you, Sean. And that's my question actually. And maybe I've missed something here, but are we talking about those 9 classrooms being able to support universal pre-K program, 6.5 hours for all kids, similar to what they have in Boston, or would that take something more than the 26 classrooms? And so that's the first question. And then the second question is, do we think that a universal pre-K program is in the offing? Is that something the school committee might be considering?
So I'll do my best to answer first, and then I see Ada smiling, so I'll let her jump on next. But I think the nine classrooms that we're talking about, and I appreciate you focusing on that, because that's one of the ones I wanted to focus on too. That would be 9 full-day preschool classrooms for the existing number of students that are enrolled. So if we took the half-day programs that we had and made that into a single-day program, just keeping the students that are in the enrollment numbers that we have now, would equate out to the 9 classrooms. And Ada and Dr. Redden, correct me where I go wrong.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right, Sean. And so building 9, it would just accommodate the same number of students. The enhancement would be that they would be with us for a full school day rather than a half a day. So currently there are, as Dr. Redden said, 3 substantially separate classrooms currently at Cunningham that are full day. There are 2 classrooms at Cunningham that have half-day programs in each of them. So there are 4 half-day classes at Cunningham, and one of those at
just clarify.
Is it?
So we have 3 currently. One's not in a full-size room at the Cunningham School, so we had to break it out into a third. If we joined that room, we would have 2 full days. So I don't want to confuse people. So the full day we currently have is completely separate classroom with the cap of 9.
Mhm.
Full
9
days that we're talking about adding. So if we call that full day A, that's the integrated half day, still a special ed program. So the ratio is 7 and 8. So 7 students on IEPs, 8 peers. So if those classes went full, there's that would be 6 at Cunningham, that would be 1 at Tucker, and we would combine. So because they would be now in full-size classrooms, I believe. So we wouldn't have to sort of break them out like we do now with the full day separate classrooms. So that's where we got the sort of 9 from. But again, that's for what we have right now. The one thing about special ed preschool programs and not universal is that it's capped by law that way. So it wouldn't necessarily open it up to more sort of enrollment. But there is that one Tucker program that is in place that would be an additional class, and then depending on how many more spaces there are, that would be a sort of decision for the town to sort of decide how they want to sustain or build the preschool program.
Right, and just in response to Mike's question about is the school committee looking at doing a universal preschool program, school committee hasn't really discussed this. However, we did do this needs assessment last spring, and it definitely showed the need. And but the grant program, state grant program that would fund those projects are really looking to do collaboration with private preschool programs to house some of those expanded classrooms so that it's not all in the public schools. So, I think that what we're talking about is expanding what we're offering by lengthening the day for the same number of students, but there's still an existing need for additional students in other local preschool programs.
All right. Glenn, you've been patiently with the hand up.
Yeah, a couple of things. The demand for full day kindergarten is there. Tucker is the one program that has a substantial waiting list for students entering it because it's a full day program. There's when we have something open full day, we get long waiting lists. The half day ones are typically harder to fill with non-special needs students, especially afternoon half day programs are especially harder to fill. So the demand is in the build it they will come world. It's definitely there if you were to open non-capped at 15 or 9 preschool classrooms. The other piece, just to throw another monkey wrench into the whole piece, is if the building is not big enough for preschool and kindergarten, if we decide that that's not an option, and you were to do a renovation to expand preschool in it, one of the things that would happen, and I've talked to Sue Maselli about this, is that we have a variety of younger students and some older students who are in substantially separate therapeutic out-of-district placements. And so if there were extra classrooms there, we could conceivably bring some of those students back in to district at a substantial savings if there were the spare rooms to do it. That's a positive. The negative, of course, is it doesn't do anything about the overcrowding of the schools other than take some kindergartens out. Preschools out of Cunningham Collicott and the one out of Tucker. So I mean, the building could be useful, but in the sense it's useful in a way that doesn't really solve the greater problem of the overcrowding of all of the buildings. It could be part of a solution, but I don't see it being a solution by itself in that sense. And as I say, it will be, if you build it just for what we have now, I think in 5 years later we'll be in a similar position.
All right, thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, it sounds like it's a bit of a temporary solution. I was thinking more along the lines of the nuts and bolts of things. So if this ends up being an early childhood education center, MSBA won't fund us, correct? I forget. Do they cut it off at kindergarten or first grade?
I believe it's kindergarten. I'm not 100%. I can look into that, but I think it would only be the kindergarten component of it.
Right, so
And
it's okay for preschool, but I think they do for kindergarten, right, Glenn?
Okay.
yeah, the other kicker on that too is we have to get it accepted, and part I think what goes on with part of that right now is we applied to their core program, which is a new building from the ground up. Renovation. Because this isn't a school, it still might fall under that. So I'm not sure, but I'll check on that.
Yeah, just a point that funding, well, might be available for the other site, there might not be much at all available here. And then just the fitness of the building for what we want to put in it. Glenn's point of the seismic work on the second and third floor could be extremely limiting with only an 8'7" floor-to-floor height, and we're trying to put some sort of structure in to re-support it. It's going to be pretty low ceilings or areas that are really difficult to work with. And then my final thought was just I know you were working on somebody to try and do some estimating. Was the plan that they would do a due diligence report as well? Or just an estimate?
At this point, just an estimate.
Just an estimate. Okay.
Yeah, I can ask them about that too.
Yeah, there's as Glenn pointed out, there's a lot to see there and think about. So a full due diligence report before we would spend a lot of money on this location might be worthwhile.
Yeah, partly what we're looking at too, outside of the cost estimate that I'm looking at for there is the additional concepts that Glenn and I have worked through to engage DRA to kind of do that proof of concept too, to make sure there are no fatal flaws in the diagrams that we're laying out and the walkthroughs that we've all done, but really have somebody with a sharper eye walk through it and look at that and develop that report. Again, echoing what you're talking about for the purchase price of it, just to make sure what we're purchasing, would fit, what we're looking for there.
All right. Thanks, Sean.
No problem. Mike?
Thanks, Sean. And I'm sorry if I'm still not quite getting it, but I think what I understand is that, and again, I apologize if I'm harping on this, but I think what I've heard is that that this space would be insufficient if the town wanted to move in the direction of universal pre-K. Is that right?
I will open that up to Ada. Dan, so
It would help, but it wouldn't become universal pre-K. No, there's
We
no way.
can't- Okay, so we couldn't do universal pre-K with this space.
No.
Okay. Well, thanks, Ada.
It would contribute towards meeting the need for additional pre-K services, but it wouldn't meet all the need.
Thank you.
Mhm.
But if I could just kind of touch on that too, not to kind of, if it goes down too much of a rabbit hole, pull me out. But overcrowding aside, if we wanted to build this facility to house just universal pre-K, I'm not sure if that's what Mike was asking specifically. If we built it out, looking at it as a standalone project for just universal pre-K, could we do that at this facility?
Oh, okay. Well,
different question.
That is a different
framed
question.
a little
And
differently.
then I was, no, I was thinking about it being both kindergarten and preschool, and with kindergarten being 17 of those classrooms, 9 classrooms wouldn't solve the problem. Could you do 26 classrooms? And that could go a long way towards addressing universal pre-K, but it doesn't address the overcrowding which is what this whole project is about in the first place.
Yep. And I was, the only reason I was asking too is on some of the options we've been asked to look at, when we looked at Gow Road, was take the preschool component out of the facility, our option of the middle school with a preschool component in it, take the preschool component out, put it somewhere else, potentially here, and then, still do Gow Road, but a much smaller footprint of the building. So again, that's a deep rabbit hole we can jump down a meeting, but
I have to really think about that one.
Yeah, and I didn't know if when Mike was asking the question about universal pre-K, adding a little more. That just what I heard him asking was different than I think what you heard, Ada. I just wanted
no, that's helpful. Thank you. I think you clarified it, Sean. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Redden.
Just real quick, it would address the way we use the space in the building currently. So I would be able to sort of take 2 classrooms out of the library, for example. I would, we would be able to have less specialist teachers on carts. So in that way, yes, the same number of students would be coming to the building, but the stresses on the building based on how we use it would be back to the sort of the original intent of some of those rooms when they were created.
So you're talking the existing building. So, the Cunningham School that you're principal of right now, if the preschools were taking out of there or the class spaces were taken out of there, the room they freed up would allow you to reassign some of the converted spaces back to their original intent.
Yes.
Aqua.
Just to be clear that I understand the conversation so far, even if we renovate and add 20,000 more square foot to the Fund 1 area, it would not be a solution to our initial ask. Is that correct? Decongesting the school.
It's a tricky question because it would decongest.
It would not be a complete solution to the initial ask. We'll still need to add something else to it.
Correct. So, if for example, if we continued with Fompon, went through the purchase, renovated the entire interior, added the additional space on, and we moved the kindergarten and the preschool in there, it would free up space at the elementary school level. So, we would check that box. The one other portion that we haven't talked about, as part of that option too, is we need to address space at the middle school. Again, for that comparison to what we're looking at Gow Road. So that's the component. I think the past 15, 20 minutes discussion has really focused on the preschool component, which right now consists of half-day preschools. And I know my daughter was there last year, with Dr. Red, it was great, but it was kind of, well, it was great. It's troublesome to drop off at 8 in the morning, go back at 11, pick up, and that doesn't take care of your afternoon where you're still paying for daycare and have to drop them off again at a private daycare and then pick them up later in the day. So I think the discussion on full day preschool was there mainly of how we came across 9 preschool rooms would be needed at Fonpon, and just that how we came to that metric. So I think that was the discussion we're having. But the problem that we're facing of overcrowding, if we built out Fonpon for what we're doing, it would address the elementary school by stripping the preschool and the kindergarten out of them, alleviating space there. But again, the middle school doesn't get touched. So that's a separate problem. Yeah, that's
we'll still have that portion. Okay. So when would it be fair to say we're comparing both projects? Even when we're finished this, we still need to add a solution to the preschool, and maybe the committee should look at the total cost of that vis-a-vis building the other project by Gow Road. And is that where we're heading?
That is good foreshadowing, my friend. Yeah, that is exactly where we're heading. So what we've been trying to the Fonpon option that we've been talking about these past 2 meetings has, we've done kind of a really deep dive the past 2 meetings to go into these. We've all walked it, took a look at it and stuff. I think where we're heading with this is, for a February town meeting, we're going to be looked at from our committee of what's our preferred option. And at some point, we're going to have to take a vote as a committee on which option we want to go forward with as our preferred option. And then those will get presented as part of the article for the warrant. I think it's going to be a little tricky with both things being discussed, because it could be an either or of them. You know what I mean? That, if Fonpon didn't pass, say that was our preferred option, our second option would be the land swap. We've got to talk that out a little bit too, probably on our next agenda item, to kind of figure out, how we align these for, the votes that we're doing. The purchase of Fonpon is kind of one avenue that an RFP has been issued. The towns, I believe the realtor has responded to it. So there's negotiations stuff going on along that end. The other end is the path we have to go down for the land swap, which requires a number of approvals with committees in the town. And that's going to require a number of meetings and stuff like that. So I think...
Sean, since the RFP has been issued and there's been responses, how does that impact the other option? What if the town engages and buys Fonpon and we find it not to be a good solution? How does that affect the entire future state of this project?
Yeah, it's a good question. That's some of the work that Glenn and myself have been working on, looking at this, and you, Scott, Tim, everybody who's walked it. And I think that's on us as a committee to look at and make that as the recommendation. For the town right now, the purchase of Fonpon would be decided at that February town meeting as one of the articles. And I'm theorizing, but if we preferred Gow Road as our preferred option for it, the town still could go through and purchase the property. I'm not sure the ramifications of how we would deal with that, but we would, have to work to make those additions work and look at it. I think the key thing that comes in is, as we're doing that financial analysis of the cost, we have to look at some threshold for us as far as like what ceiling of costs are we willing to absorb before it doesn't become a good option. Mainly because we'd be renovating an existing space, talking about the Fonpon, adding on to it, making a new space there, and then adding additional space onto the middle school, not really fixing the middle school because, we're not adding a new cafeteria, or not adding bigger gymnasium. It would just be adding classroom space on there. And weigh that option cost-wise, schedule-wise, and then educational component-wise against what we're offering at Gal Road. So it's complicated. There's a lot of stuff for us to take in over the next couple of weeks, which is kind of why we're having this rhythm of meetings, every other week, because things are moving pretty fast right now. So I just want to keep everybody abreast of, what's going on.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other comments on Fonpon while we're at it? And seeing none. All right, let me just. All right, so I think I just went on a diatribe that covered the next agenda items. So, we're on to new business, which is our special town meeting that's coming up in February. I went over the timeline earlier. So what we're looking for right now, and I think some of the work we'll be doing is to try to figure out, what are the articles we're going to include on that special town meeting. So, obviously the two articles that we're talking about right now, the purchase of Fonpon, and it would just be the straight, real estate transaction for whatever negotiated price occurs with Fonpon. And then I believe the other one that we would be going forward with is, the land swap option, basically resurrecting what we did in May. So as we're looking at that, there are a couple of things that come up too. Mainly one was there was legislation that was just passed in regards to Article 97. I think it triggers a couple new things that are on there. So there's some work we need to do, I think, on that, just to get educated on how that might impact us. And then, as we identify, I'm hoping by our next meeting to have those parcels of land from BSC Group that we can kind of look at them together, and hopefully at our next meeting, possibly have a vote on, which option of those 8 parcels that we want to pursue as our preferred choice. That's on there, and and then basically once we have that as our preferred option, start lining up meetings with different committees. I know one of the meetings that I did talk to Ada about is having a meeting with the school committee, and what I'd like to do is, for any of these meetings, that I've been attending and stuff like that, I just obviously want to open it up to everybody else on the committee, and if there's enough interest, we can post them as joint committee meetings. I just need to know ahead of time so I get a published agenda and everything there, so we can have the right amount of attendance. So in regards to joint meetings, just open it up, see if anybody's interested in attending or assisting on some of the presentations.
And I was just going to suggest that I think was it December 7th or the 21st that we were talking about, Sean?
I've
a sense with your timing.
Yeah, I think
We're meeting both of those dates.
Yeah, I think the December 7th one, Ada, was to, give an update for what we were doing. And then we'd be looking for you guys on your next meeting from there to ideally take a vote on it based on the input that we provided at the previous meeting.
Okay.
So, as I'm looking through this stuff, our next meeting is, planned out 2 weeks from now on December 5th. Like I said, is my goal would be to have the plans from BSC Group in And then I would, as we get those, I'm not sure if everybody has had a chance to get out to the site to take a walk and kind of see where the stakes are out there. If not, I'd, recommend you do that. And then after we come up with our plan and agree on what parcel we like, then we'd start presenting that to Conservation Commission and other committees. Glenn?
Don't we have a special town meeting on December 5th?
Do we?
Yeah.
All right. So I might do it possibly, and I will move that date.
I think we've heard that it's just going to be one night. Is that what you're hearing, Glenn?
Yeah, it's small number of articles. That doesn't look like it's going to be with the famous last words. Doesn't look like it's going to be more than one night, but I think that's likely to be a one-nighter.
Yeah.
Okay. And all right. So what I'll do is I'll touch base with everybody to try to figure out, alternate time, ideally during that week. Even if we had to do it earlier in the day. Town meeting starts at what, 7:30, Glenn? So, possibly because, once we get these parcels back from BSC group, to make a decision on which one we want is kind of critical to I think that's the first kind of box we have to check as we start running through. Mike, appreciate you jumping back in. So I don't know if I was trying to go over essentially for our timeline for the special town meeting, a goal of, our next meeting, which I planned on December 5th, but Glenn reminded me there's a special town meeting that night. So, I got to integrate that town calendar on mine. But the goal of that is to look, talking about the land swap only, to look at the land swap, make a determination on what parcel out of the 8 options that we're looking at is our preferred one, and have a vote on that, within our committee and stuff. So whether we have to do that, earlier in the day before town meeting, or try to find a different time, maybe even before that, to do it. But just keep folks aware of that. The other one that comes in too, and if you could weigh in a little on it too, Mike, for the special town meeting, my assumption is there'll be 2 articles, most likely, the purchase of farm pond and the land swap. So I'm trying to figure out the best way, how those would go for that. And if it's too difficult to answer right now, I mean, there's a lot of different things that have to occur.
Yeah, I mean, we've had circumstances before where there's been alternative articles, and you just, if the one passes, then you pull the other one back. I mean, there is a construct here where you could say, well, we want to move forward with the land swap. We want to move forward with both. In the event that farm pond doesn't work, and the land swap, it would revert back anyway if it's not used. And so, tactically and politically, that may not do well. But you could see that, just in terms of the strategy of building a school, it would make sense to have both available, particularly since one would revert back anyway. I'm not sure, as I said, I'm not sure that would work with town meeting. I think the town meeting is probably going to want to decide one or the other, maybe not. But I think as a committee, the select board sets the warrant and decides which articles go in and in what order. And but I presume that this committee will make a recommendation on what we think. And what we think maybe we should present both options, but we prefer option A. And so we think option A should go first, and we'll make the presentation on option A. And if option A doesn't go forward, then maybe we go on option B. That's one way to think about it, I think.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'll just add, I'm sorry I harped so much on universal pre-K, but it seems to me that's a big part of this decision. If we're going to go down that road, anytime in the near term. And state may be going down that road. So if we're going to go down that road, or we need to go down that road, or want to go down that road, then we may want to think long and hard on if that has an impact on this decision. So.
Okay, Ada, you have the hand raised.
I just was wondering, where do we stand with the possibility of having DRA come in to evaluate Fontbonne, or do we feel like we have enough information on our own?
So with DRA right now, I have to reach out to Carl to find out, estimated cost for him to look at that. That's one of the emails I did not get to today or yesterday. So I'll do my best to draft one tonight after this. There's a lot of things we'll be asking him to do. So I just want him to look at it. The other part too is, we're looking for a quick turnaround on it too. So the financial component of it too, within our committee, I'll be interested to see from BSC kind of how much of their contract they've expended, because their contract was a not to exceed. So I'll touch base with them also to find out how much is remaining on there, and if we need them for anything further, and if we don't, we could recoup some of that money, because we don't, the invoice will be less. So the first step is reaching out to Carl, see what their availability is, and if they have availability and can do it, what the price would be.
Great. I just want to respond, if I could, just going back to Mike's comment about universal pre-K. I mean, really, in the best of all possible worlds, we could do both of these projects. If we did the second middle school, just the 5th and 6th grade, and left the preschool at Fontbonne and expanded Fontbonne to really become a larger facility than the 9 classrooms that we've been talking about, then it really could be something that could meet our community's needs. And there is state funding to support projects like that. So it's, I think it is an opportunity for us to consider. So I don't want to walk away from that concept either.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Mike, while you're in transit, if you heard that, your question that you asked Ada last time on Fontbonne, I clarified it afterwards, mainly because the question, I think, as you were posing it, would be, for the entirety of Fontbonne when we built it, could that house a universal pre-K program? And I think Ada's initial response was based on, addressing overcrowding and having that preschool program, which when she said it couldn't, but, I expanded your question a little bit more, that, not thinking about overcrowding, but strictly looking at, universal pre-K, could we build Fontbonne to do that? And then, because part of what's come up is, opposition to the land swap or the middle school option with the pre-K component at Gow Road that we proposed in May was, could we take the preschool component out of that facility, make it smaller, put it somewhere else? And, if we could do that as part of this, and again, a 2-phase project, that, we look at Fontbonne originally, and if Fontbonne doesn't work, then we can, have that site up there, which kind of plays in to the, option A, option B that you were talking about, Mike. And, ideally with that, if we're going that route and just kind of thinking aloud, it would be nice to have that land, under the land swap there, just in case something came up over that kind of period of time that we put in the clause for it to revert back. And that's been some of my thinking too, of, even if we went with Fontbonne as our preferred option, I still think the work that we've done so far on the land swap, having that there for lack of a better word, a future school building committee, if the option needed over that time frame, would be very helpful for them.
Yeah, and even more in the short term. Look, if there's state funding available for a universal pre-K program, and that could be housed at Fontbonne, either in the short or medium term, then you're really solving a lot of problems with both of these projects, right? And if you can make the Gala Road project a little smaller without having the preschool aspect there, maybe that's gives some comfort to those who are less intrigued by it.
Selena?
Yeah, just for clarification purposes again, I mean, I think I hear the conversation going into this where the choices are Giles Road or Fontbonne, like that could be a choice. But to me, it doesn't seem like that's a choice. It's either Giles Road by itself, with that whole encompassing the solution to where the overcrowding is across the system, or it's what I think Mike just described, which is a smaller Giles Road project with Fontbonne, but it's not Fontbonne by itself. That doesn't address the issues that I think our committee was charged with.
Yeah, it's it seems like there's so I'll do my best to frame everything out, and Mike, I'll let you go first, and then I'll jump in after.
I was just what Selena just described is where the direction I'm going in. I think I have been in the direction of, well, we can solve it with Fontbonne and bolting on something onto the middle school. That's an alternative to Gal Road, but I think the future here is going to be universal pre-K, and if we can't solve that problem and our overcrowding problem just with Fontbonne or just with Gile Road, then it seems to me then that's what Selena described is kind of the direction that my mind is going.
Yeah. So if I could just kind of frame it, from what I've been hearing over the past couple of meetings was, at our last meeting we talked about permanent options as Gow Road with the upper middle school and the pre-K component. That was option one. The second option was looking at Fontbonne, building that out to house preschool and kindergarten, along with in addition to the middle school. And that was our second option. And I think what's coming out tonight a little bit more is, do we look at Fontbonne essentially as a universal pre-K educational facility that would be there, and then Gow Road would be a secondary project of an upper middle school, no pre-K component to it. And that would strip, we'd still move the 5th grade out of elementary. We'd still move preschool out of elementary. So we'd solve that problem. We'd still split up the middle school as our proposal did, and that. So the only difference is between, I think, the first and the third option is where the pre-K is housed. The good thing with that third option is it's a much larger pre-K, design, and it gives universal pre-K where we could recoup some of the funding if state funding's there. So I hope that kind of puts it in perspective. That's kind of going off the top of my head. Scott?
Yeah, just thinking, we have a pretty well-defined problem with the overcrowding. How do we define the need for the universal pre-K and the time in which that's needed in order to bake that in as part of the project?
Mike?
So, well, Ada probably can speak to this better than I can, but when we did universal kindergarten, right, back in 2016, 15, I think it was 16, Glenn, right? think it was 16. It's my last year in the school.
2008. 2007 and 8 was when it began. 2008.
No, I mean in Milton, we did tuition free full day.
Tuition free. Yeah.
Tuition free. We did tuition free full day in 16, which is in my mind equivalent to universal pre-K, right? So to me, it's a question about whether the community, and the community supported it, right? We had support of it at town meeting. We were able to get state funding, and the community supported it, right? So to me, it's a question of whether the community wants it and supports it, and seems to, I hope we're going in that direction, but I don't know if I have my fingers on the pulse as nearly as much as our school committee friends do.
Well, I think we do know the need is there, and the interest for full day preschool programs there, and parents are going out of town with their kids looking for preschool because they can't get their needs met here in town, and it's challenging. So yeah, and in a lot of ways, this feels like deja vu before the last school building project that I was one of those early childhood voices that said you can't build schools for the 21st century without full day kindergarten, and kind of here we are again. And I think we're at that point that the need is truly there, and I don't know about how Chapter 70 comes into play with preschool. Glenn, I see his hand is up, so I'd be because that would be different. To play into this, Glenn.
Yeah, I mean, one of the issues when we built the previous schools, we got the money to build the classrooms that would support full day kindergarten, enough of them, but we didn't have free full day kindergarten at that point, because we needed the tuition money to make it run. It didn't happen until later, and one of the reasons that it happened later is we made the argument based on Chapter 70 money that with a one-time infusion of money into the program to get it started, we would recoup the additional operating funds through Chapter 70, because when our full day in kindergarten, you get them, they count as a full child for Chapter 70 reimbursement as opposed to half-day kindergarten. So there was a notable uptick, which I calculated at the time, as I recall, to help sell this and say we would recoup this. So we're sort of at stage one of this again. Are we building the classrooms to support it in the hope that, if the state comes through with it and is going to require full-day kindergarten, they're going to amend the Chapter 70 formula so that it acknowledges pre-K. Right now, it only acknowledges those students who are on individual ed programs, pre-K. 3 to 5 year olds count if they're on IEPs, they don't count otherwise. But if the state is going to push for universal pre-K, that's a change that's likely coming at some point. And our argument is sort of like the original school building project. We're positioning ourselves to be ready for that when it happens. It may be a two-step, it may be to open up the space for pre-K and eventually make it, free full day to the extent that the state is, gets in with the support. So I think we're more at the 2004, 2005 point on kindergarten than we are at the 2015 point on full day kindergarten.
I think that the one thing, as I'm hearing about this too, is, right now we knew for, early childhood education center with preschool and kindergarten together, to meet today's needs and to house a full day preschool for the number of students that we have right now, or a number of classrooms that are 26. If we were to do universal preschool, coming up, how do we determine what that number would be? Because what happens is, that goes back to how much space we would need to add on to the building, the financial cost of that space and stuff like that. So, again, just going off the top of my head for a lot of this stuff, do we build it out for the 26 now, run it as an early childhood education center, and then as those needs come around for universal pre-K, you know what I mean, move the kindergarten back up to the elementary, and then look at the upper middle school, the other theory that we've come up with. So it's interesting. I like it.
Good to know that by the time I got involved, Glenn, it was easy in 15 and 16.
Just the other point on your last point, Sean, the elementary schools do have rooms that are specifically built as kindergarten classrooms. They're different size. They have little bathroom facilities that you wouldn't want to put a 4th grade class in because, well, they're just the wrong size. So in a sense, having everything go into Fontbonne for a while, with the idea that, as you know, if you build the upper middle on Guile Road, you can move 5th grade up and move kindergarten back into rooms that were designed for kindergarten, expand Fontbonne to a full day, into a universal pre-K. And if it doesn't go universal, as I said, you could always bring back some of the therapeutic students from out of district. Because frankly, even if we had to hire one teacher for each of them, it'd be cheaper than what we're doing right now. That there's some also cost savings there that also look good. So I mean, there's potential in a various different ways. The question is, can you sell that potential at town meeting?
Yeah, that's the more out of all the things that through our meetings that we've talked about with Fontbonne and stuff like that, I think everyone. Well, I don't want to speak for everyone and apologize. I do that way too much, but for me, I think the purchase of the building of Fontbonne is a good idea for the town. It opens us up for possibilities that we could utilize it for different things, educationally, town-wise, stuff like that. It's a nice property in a good location that I think we could find uses for it. And then as the land swap component of it too, there's no financial cost to that right now. We're not, it's a straight allocation of land right now that we're not asking for money for and stuff like that. We're just asking essentially for a reverter timeline that would go along with it. So yeah, Mike.
I was just going to say in response to Glenn, you can sell it as an alternative to a developer. Right? And it's an alternative to a developer, and the alternative is, well, I mean, I guess that cuts a lot of different ways depending on the interest group, but there's an argument there.
My thought there was, if you don't want to buy it, what do you think is going to go in there? I think that's a reasonable question. I think there's a real 40B fear in this town right now, and we're overrun with them. And I think there's a fair number of people at town meeting who would vote to buy it just so to leave it empty. Frankly, if you told them we were just going to buy it and not put anything there, I think you'd get a fair number of people willing to buy it just because of all the other options there. And to have it as a town property, how could it be a problem as a town property?
The only problem would be that the select board would be in charge of it. Nobody wants that.
Better you than me.
So yeah, with it seems like for the two options that we're talking about, they're melded together. From what I'm hearing, 3 different things we're looking at, and we can. I think for us, we got to digest more of this discussion that we're having tonight. And look at it a little bit further, for our next meeting. Just seeing if there's any other discussion or questions, for the special town meeting, portion of the agenda that we're talking about tonight. Seeing no hands. All right. So I think the second to last thing we have on the agenda is talking about our next meeting, which I originally listed as December 5th, which I'll revise. So what I'll do is I'll reach out to everybody, try to find, a date, ideally prior to that. So maybe later next week no, we can't do it next week either. Yeah, I was thinking we've got the holiday next week. I'll be in touch with everybody. We'll try to find a date that will work for everybody. So as of right now, it's to be determined. So on that note, just seeing if anybody has any other. Yep, Glenn, hand raised. Sorry about that.
My imagination, or isn't the holiday this week? I think we could meet next week.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, next week is good, John.
It has been a very long day. I apologize.
Yeah.
If we could meet, what I'm thinking about, next week, if I could get us, if we get the stuff from BSC group, Monday, and that we could have a meeting ideally on Thursday. Just to kind of work through some of that stuff and look at that. That would help get us aligned for presenting to school committee the following week for that too. So I'll be in touch with everyone next week. Glenn, thank you for the clarification on that. I would have showed up with a turkey at someone's house on the wrong day. It would have been great.
I was going to say, Sean, if you have nothing to do on Thursday, I'm sure one of us would be happy to invite you over.
Yeah, perfect. Well, Patriots are on that night too, so it's going to be good. All right. So yeah, with that, I'll email everybody and try to coordinate that time. Anything else, in regards to meetings or anything like that? Yes, Aqua.
Can we move a motion for adjournment?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to
Second.
that motion.
Betty second.
Betty second. Okay.
All right. Perfect. Thank you. And we'll do a roll call vote. And I'll just call them as I see them. Aqua, you're up first.
Yes.
All right. Scott Tereshak.
Yes.
Selena Miranda.
Yes.
Betty White.
Yes.
Mike Zulis.
Yes.
Tim Lombard. Yep. He went on mute for a minute. I know he's packing and doing stuff. Glenn dropped off, and I'm a yes. So, all right. Perfect. Thank you all very much. Have a good night.
All
Happy
right.
Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving.